Hello, everybody. My name is Wambui. Welcome to 70 Years and Beyond. The question of the day is, you said you were an actress. How did you break into show business, and did you become famous? Well, I'm going to answer that last part first. I did not become famous. However, I like to describe my acting career as fruitful, meaning that I was an actress and it was my main source of income. I didn't get rich, but it was my main source of income from, through the 70s, the 80s, and the beginning of the 90s. That's how I predominantly made my money, was in the theater. So I feel very proud of the shows that I was in. I'm proud of the roles that I had, and I'm so happy and feel so blessed that I had that opportunity to perform in the shows, in the places, and to travel and do all those things, but I'll get into that later. But no, I was never famous. Okay, so it says, how did you break into show business? In my previous videos on this channel, and some of them, I talk about when I was growing up, how I just loved the idea of theater. How at one point, I'm sure I was more comfortable on stage than I was when I was off the stage. And so I also am sharing either here, I don't know how those YouTubers do it, but either in this corner or this corner, there's going to be a link to a video where I describe how I got to New York in the first place. I'm not going to take that opportunity to go into that story now, but it is a story that every time I think about it, lets me know that yes, there is such a thing as miracles. And that's how I got to New York, through what I can only describe as some miraculous things that happened. So I got to New York, and I'm going to start the story today to explain how did you break into show business from when I'm already in New York, okay? So I'm in New York and I'm studying. I came to New York to go to New York University School of the Arts. I had read about this school in a 17 magazine and went through all of those things. Again, too long to get into right now, but a miraculous story. And I ended up in New York when I graduated from high school. The year is 1968. Now, the school was called the School of the Arts. Today at New York University, their School of the Arts is called Tisch School of the Arts. But at that time in 68, and I believe the school had only existed a few years before I got there in 68. And it was a little building down on 2nd Avenue, down in Greenwich Village in New York City. And that is where I would go every day to study acting. And it was a school where the emphasis, except for theater history, I didn't really take any what's considered academics. I'm sometimes think maybe I should have, but I didn't take any academics. I don't know how the school is structured today, but in 68, it was all about performing. In fact, I remember having teachers that would come in to teach us who didn't have fancy degrees and all kinds of letters behind their name. They were just their name, but they were performers. And so it was performers, training performers, and I loved every minute of it. Let's see, we had subjects like, besides acting, I remember circus, voice, of course, movement, dance, those kinds of things. So we were just busy all day training our bodies, training our voices, and training our minds to be on the stage. There was a rule at the school. One of the rules at the school was that you were not to audition. We were in New York City, we're Broadway theater, the hub of theater, but we were encouraged, we were told, please don't go around auditioning for shows right now. Study with us and you can audition for anything anybody posts that's happening here at the school, but don't go outside to audition. Now, when I was at NYU at that time, And even now, sometimes, I always had this thought in my head that I wanted to be a stand-up comic. I read in a trade newspaper about a show that was having auditions, and they said for the audition, they wanted you to prepare a monologue that was funny, but they wanted the monologue to be based on a parable or story from the Bible and make it funny and come do that as your audition. Now, that's all I saw. I don't even remember. I may have seen the name of the show, but it meant nothing to me. I was just going, so I wanted to see if I could make people laugh, if they thought it was funny, and I thought it was a good exercise. So I took time and I put together, worked on this funny monologue. It was based on the prodigal son from the Bible. And I went down to where the audition was that day just to see if I could do it, just to be on stage, because that's what I liked. I liked being on stage, and this was an opportunity to be on stage. And if people laughed, that would be really, really good. And if they didn't know me anyway. I wasn't supposed to be auditioning anyway, and I'd go back to the drawing board. And nobody there knew me, so I felt safe. So it was one of those auditions where the people who are auditioning were allowed to sit in the audience, which I thought was just great, because if I'm going to be saying something funny, it helps to have people out there who can laugh. I'm not just talking to one or two people sitting at a table. And so that's what happened. When it was my turn, I went on the stage and I did my monologue. I don't remember it word for word or at all anymore, but it was about the prodigal son, and in some part, one of it, he was going home because he needed his Afro sheen or something like that. But anyway, it turned out to be pretty funny, or at least they thought it was. And I felt very proud of myself. And so when my monologue was over, I said thank you. They said thank you. And I went to leave the stage. And they said, no, sing your song. And I thought, I don't have a song. And someone said, you did know this was a musical, right? And the fact was, I didn't. I didn't even know what show this was. I was just coming because I saw you wanted to do, I didn't say this to them, but I was thinking I just came because I wanted to do my funny monologue. I don't know. And we're not supposed to be auditioning outside of the school anyway. Now, this is it internally. I'm not saying this to them. So they're saying, well, this is musical. We want to hear the song. And so there was nothing I could do. I didn't have a song. And so that's what I had to say. There was no getting around it. I just said, I don't have a song. And they said, you don't have a song? And the people in the audience laughed and thought that was funny. And I'm thinking, well, I don't, I'm going back to NYU. I just came through to do this monologue. And they said, oh, well, please sing something. And people were calling out things from the audience for me to sing. And finally, at that time, I was very much in love with Dionne Warwick and the song Walk On By. And so I didn't have any music to give the pianist or anything. So if you see me walking down the street, I just sang, a little bit of Walk On By. And then I said, thank you. They said, thank you. And then they said, would you like to do some improvisations with us? Now, I loved that. To me, that was like playing. That was like the best thing when you do improvisations, because you're given a role or you're given a title or a word or something, and you make up the scene as you go, including the other people who are working with you. And so it's like playtime. It's just making up as you go. And to me, I was like a kid in a candy store. It was like, yes, I want to do some improvisations. And so we did some improvisations, and then they said thank you, and I said thank you, and then I left and went home. Now, by the time I got back to my apartment in East Village, what we had was this kind of answering machine. There were no cell phones. We had an answering machine that was attached to your telephone. That would take messages while you were out, because all the phones were landlines. And so when I got home and I played back the messages, I had a message from the company that had the auditions. And they said that they wanted me to be in the DC, the Washington, DC company of Godspell. And I was sure they had made a mistake. So I wasn't excited. I didn't tell a soul. I didn't say anything, not even to my sister who lived in the apartment with me. I didn't tell anybody. I just thought, okay, I'm going to go there because this will give me a chance to see what a producer's office looks like. And they'll see me and they'll realize I'm not the girl that they thought they were calling. So that whole night, I slept peacefully. There was no excitement. And the next day I got up and I went down to the office at around the time they said I should come. So I found the address and I went down there. And when I walked in, they were very happy to see me. And they had my name on the papers. And so they talked to me a little bit about the show and what the rehearsal process would be like, and that when we would need to leave to go to Washington, D.C. And it was going to be presented at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. And I signed the agreement, the contract, and now I was a professional actress. Oh, but I was so nervous that I was starting to understand why the school said, don't audition outside. Because now I'm starting to think, am I ready? And so I went to rehearsal and I realized I wasn't ready. For one thing, I did not know how to sing harmonies. I only knew how to just sing melodies. I wasn't a harmony singer. And so it was just very difficult for me to remember. I'm learning to sing harmonies at this rehearsal. Okay, so I'm learning to sing harmonies. Now the song, everyone had like a song that featured them. The song that featured me was a song called Where Are You Going? And it was the only song that was not written by Stephen Schwartz. And it was a lyric soprano song. The girl who did it in the show, who wrote it, had a lyric soprano voice. I did not have a lyric soprano voice. And so I would listen to that song, and every day I dreaded when it was time to rehearse that song because I knew I didn't have that voice. And I was wondering, is this a setup? Why did they hire me? Because I don't know what I'm doing here. So I would go home every day and I'd try singing that song in my lyric soprano voice, and it just wasn't happening for me. And then one night, I'm home in my apartment, and at that time, I was very much in love with a singer named Nina Simone. And so I started playing the Nina Simone albums, and a thought hit me, and it said, when you go back tomorrow, sing the song as if you are Nina Simone. Sing the song the way Nina Simone would sing this song. And so that's what I did. So that day at rehearsal, when it was time to rehearse that song, I became Nina Simone. And I sang the song the way Nina Simone sang the song. And oh my goodness, it was a hit. And so everything was going great. All the acting parts, the comedy lines, all of that was great. I was good at playing characters. I was good at being funny, but I wasn't good at singing harmonies. And I finally got the song and I could relax and I could finally tell people, I'm rehearsing for Godspell. I'm going to be in Godspell in Washington, D.C. because I finally had the song. I was singing the song the way that Nina Simone would have sang that song. And so finally the day came when we went to Washington, D.C., and everything was great. And then there was a problem, though, on the, I think it was either the day before or the day of the opening when we were having like a final vocal rehearsal where the musical director realized that I was not singing the right harmonies. And so I don't want to say he yelled at me, but he singled me out and he said, okay, my name was Washington at the time. He said, okay, Miss Washington, what are you going to sing? Because I kept changing. And so he said, what are you going to sing? And so he said, we're going to go through this whole show and you just sing whatever you're going to sing. And we're going to make sure we're with you. And I felt like this big. I was not singing the harmonies. I was singing melodies. I was just singing the melody of the song. And so I felt really bad because everyone was kind of compensating for me. So they were dropping back to sing the parts I should have been singing while allowing me to, oh, it was awful. I got through that and then through the opening. And then after that, I started taking music. Because that was the component that was missing. I didn't know music. In fact, I didn't know how to read. I just would listen and just would sing and embellish on what I was singing. I didn't know how to read music. So I started taking music. Once the show opened, started taking music. I took more voice and I started learning how to do harmonies. And gradually, as the weeks went by, I was finally able to sing the parts that I was supposed to have known how to sing before, but it was a whole music lesson and it was a whole patience. It was, I really thank the people who saw something in me, because it was something they saw in me. And I think it was my sense of comedy, my sense of timing. All of that was great. I was wonderful. I had a presence, but when it came to the music, especially the harmonies, How has the audition process changed over the years? And you didn't ask me that, but I'm going to tell you that because I really do believe that it's important to know that when I used to audition for shows through the 70s, 80s, and even the early 90s, the whole creative team was usually there. I believe that if by the whole creative team, I mean the writers, directors, the choreographer, the musical director, everybody was there. You were in a room with people who could say yes or no. And I know that's what happened when I auditioned for Godspell, was that the whole creative team was there. So they saw something, because when I did my last auditions, which were around 2013, 14, right there, when I would go into the audition room, there'd be one person, and that would be like a representative, like maybe somebody's assistant from the casting company. And that one person would decide whether or not you were worthy to go on to be seen by someone who actually had the power to say yes or no. So when in the earlier days, though, it seems like the creative team would show up, whether it was a union call, agent call, or open call. Now, open call is where whether you have an agent or not, whether you're a member of the union or not, they'll see you. And so even at the open calls, I remember the whole creative teams would be there. You wouldn't be just auditioning for one person or for someone's assistant. And so I believe that made a big difference, because for me to show up at an audition today and they ask for a song when it's a musical, oh my goodness, I'm sure I would have been tossed out of the window. But because I believe that the creative team saw something in me that they were willing to take a chance on, because it wasn't about me being a professional with, oh, here's my music, I'm going to sing this song, I'm going to do it in this key now. And then the fact that it was a harmony show and I didn't do harmonies very well, but they worked with me anyway, and I got that right. Now, The Wiz was the same thing, I believe. Now, I had learned, I had grown, I knew some stuff by then. I was on it, okay? I was seasoned by the time I auditioned for The Wiz. But what I mean by the same thing is, I believe that had the creative team not been there when I auditioned, because I was auditioning for the role of a witch called Pearl, which at the time was being played by a woman who I respect her, but it was an elderly woman. It was an old witch. It was supposed to be an old witch who was just a kind of a washed up witch. And I was very young at that time. But I believe because of my like I said, my comedy timing, my sense of humor, and my presence, and and I just feel that they saw something, because I believe had I walked into a room where the representative from the agency was there, they would have said, "Oh no, she's too young," and they wouldn't have even paid me any mind, because right away they would have looked at me and said, "Oh my God, she's too young." But because I was too young for the whole creative team, they could say, "Well, wait a minute," and they could talk among themselves and say, "Yeah, she's not old, but she has something else. She's bringing something else." And so that's how I believe I was hired to be at a Pearl, because the whole creative team was there and they could look at it and say, wait, wait, wait. Well, we did say this is an old witch, but there's something there. And so I was hired as Ada Pearl. I believe I was a wonderful Ada Pearl. I enjoyed being Ada Pearl in several companies of the Wiz. And so I just had a good time. I seemed to go from show to show. During that time, I was dealing with some mental health issues, but it was because of my being able to do shows that kept me as sane as I was. And so I was not famous. I was never famous, but I had a good time performing. And then later on, I started writing my own pieces. I have some one-woman shows, one that deals with domestic violence, and one that is a musical show that deals with my life when I was dealing with the mental health system. And so I encourage young people who are interested in theater to please start writing and coming up with your own ideas for shows and write your own shows, because no matter how talented you are and no matter how well you do the harmonies, you may be too tall, too short, too whatever. So, always have something in your portfolio that you created so that you can go out and work and present when times seem to be really slow. That is how I broke into show business. I was never famous, but I had a wonderful time, and I feel so blessed to have been able to be in the shows that I was in, play the roles that I played, to travel the places that it allowed me to travel. I used to love being on the road. And let's see, when I left Godspell, I went to a rock musical called Gentlemen of Verona. And then I went to Jesus Christ Superstar, The Magic Show, The Wiz, Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope, Crowns. They may not be in this order, but basically these are some of the shows that I did that I am very proud of and very happy to have had the opportunity to do them.